make sure. I wanted to see if that's up to date. Okay, that's a good spot for me to take a break. Hey. Well, happy Wednesday. Good to see everybody. John T, what's going on? I thought there was an Equibal meeting right now.
Yes, there has to be. Is it the Mixut audio? Because I'm looking for him.
This is fun. It's like you're wandering around the building, looking in all different rooms.
Yeah, I'm still looking for him, but we said we'll be looking at the beginning of the meeting and then catch up together. And yes, yeah, we have Equival. We expect some stablecoin in November if the news or rumors are true. So we are getting ready to get it on mainnet. Yeah.
What did you hear, Mix? Is Jed coming soon or something, or what?
We know it's these are the rumors, but it cannot wait for too long, right? I think people are kind of expecting stablecoins, and should it not come from DJ Coty, then I think somebody may surprise us. At least people are kind of calling for it, yeah. So it may happen sooner than later.
I see.
So we'll see if that is the case. If not, well, we'll continue to do our test and preparations for handling native tokens, because stablecoins will come in different shapes and forms.
It's really comforting to hear you say that, Jonty, because I was thinking this morning, it's like there's a thin line between waiting appropriately for certain tooling and looking completely incompetent, and I'm never sure which one I am, you know. And so it's a leap of faith a lot of times, right? Like the specific case I was thinking of is, hey, I want to have GBTE on mainnet. Let's have it already, and we could if we used Plutus V1, but also, as we've discussed previously, it feels worth it to wait for the ability to interact with a reference script in the front end before deploying that, because we know it's coming eventually. Hopefully soon, those issues with the serialization library are fixed. But as we wait, to an outside observer, the simple story is, well, it's not released yet, right? So how do you know when it's appropriate to wait for the right tooling, the right stable coin, and how do you decide if it's worth it to put something out that might not be all the way to the point of where you wanted it to be, but at least you've released something?
I think releasing something is not the goal. It has to be a product. So if you release a car with only 3 wheels, it may try to get out of the plot, and then it's another issue on the highway. Yes, I think, however, I do think that certain elements are within the community's ability to implement, like a reference script. People who develop wallets may have a way to catch up and do it, whereas a stable coin, I don't know if it's some type of IOG control or anything. It seems to be harder than anything else. Yeah. And the stablecoin will only come in when we need it. And in our case, we found that if it goes beyond December, we might as well launch with ADA, just ask for a high amount to account for the spread and try and balance things out. At least that can work still.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. I like that. I like that metaphor of the car driving down the highway. Yeah, tricycles, eh? Exactly. Oh, when are we going to make tricycle NFTs? Jonty, we were talking, Mix and I were talking yesterday. If the Equival team ever wants to present anything at live coding, or even to bring us into a dev meeting just to watch you guys practice, I would love that. That would be really cool to kind of come full circle there.
Definitely.
Well, hey everybody. Hey Mix. So as I noted in Discord, this is a pretty cool moment for PPBL, right? we got this initial course out the door from July through September, and a bunch of people on this call contributed to that initial rollout. And then a bunch of people on this call are new friends and collaborators from working on this, working through the course together. And we're now in the part where we have a course. It's complete enough. It doesn't cover enough Plutus, as we talked about last week, and it's going to be great to include some deeper dives into different Plutus functions and to continue to add functionality. There are example contracts that can be improved. There's documentation that can be improved. And there's a bunch of videos that were originally made when we were using the original testnet. And so, in only 3 months, we've been through a lot together, watching the course launch, testnet fail, pre-prod spin up, pre-prod respinning last week, and this week being in the process of just making sure that all those contracts are running again. But this is not something that should be treated as unexpected or inconvenient. It's going to keep happening. Someday there's going to be a Plutus V3, and that's going to involve a wholesale update of the course. And so for this thing to be sustained in the long term, it's good to start talking now about how we continue to update it in real time. And so one innovative idea that came up yesterday after Playground, where a few of us got together just to talk PBL and to-do list items. And I think Juan raised this idea. What if the way we update the videos in the Canvas course is by launching a new cohort, say in January or sometime early next year. And all of those videos that are on Canvas, we just re-record them as live coding sessions and do these as kind of in-person sessions for people who want to start taking the course then. And I share that as just one example of a way that we can innovate on keeping this resource up to date, accurate, and helpful for people. Wrapped up in that, as you know, the course as it currently exists introduces Plutus V1 first. And I don't know if that's the right decision in the long run, right? There's probably a good argument for eventually no longer even bothering to teach Plutus V1, but to get people right into the cutting edge. And so when is the right time for that? Kind of starting to think about that together. And if anybody has insights, this is something I would love help thinking about. What's the right time, right? How valuable is it for people to get to know the UTXO model, start to understand the role of a Plutus script by doing it the way we've done with V1. And then once they have a certain amount of basics, showing them, okay, here's V2. So that's an example of a question on the horizon. And there's going to continue to be reasons to update the existing course content. Additionally, there's going to eventually be, see you soon, Jonty. See you soon, Mix. There's going to be reasons to add additional modules, right? So 200 level. Here's building background knowledge, minting a token, getting started with front-end interactions, thinking about NFTs. But if you remember this module, this is really about metadata and standards. Just used a little clickbait here in the module title. And then thinking about the business logic, validators and compiled scripts. But there's all sorts of new stuff coming out. Maybe you've seen the news from Harmonic Pool about about their ability to go all the way from end to end without touching Haskell, to write and compile all the way down to CBOR, to serialize to Plutus core using only TypeScript instead of Haskell. That's incredible. Would that be a useful thing to make a module about? And again, that's just an example. Yeah, and Nelson, I tend to agree, right? Backwards compatibility is going to make it easier. V1 contracts will always be relevant. They're always going to be valid, but they might get expensive to use. So it's an interesting thing. And in my opinion, I would love for learners at the very least to see the transaction cost of a Plutus V1 script, and then to implement the same thing on Plutus V2 and say, wow, look, that upgrade saves this much Lovelace every time a transaction runs. That's a pretty cool thing to understand deeply. And my opinion is that it would empower people, but I might be wrong. And that's something that we got to keep looking at. So this is the ongoing work. And also, as I mentioned in Discord, this relates to the work that's starting to take shape in the next round of tokenomics. So I want to just mention a little bit about tokenomics, but also put this Plutus work in context. Plutus PBL started a year ago, September 2021, with 4 people. And it was, we were just getting together and starting to think about what will it look like to work in real time in building out project-based resources. Long story short, that work, some of which is documented still on gimballabs.com, led to the launch of the first course in Canvas that ran from February to April. And that's how some of us here met and started to think ahead to the next course right away. And then this one that we now have, version 2 of the course, launched in July. And a lot of you have been here for that. So with tokenomics, there's something similar. There was kind of this initial invitation to start working on that, and that ran from January through April. And now we're thinking about how to take that initial work, really open-ended, asking more questions than having answers, and start to take what we learned there and turn it into a more formal course like this to start that journey. And just like this course has these projects running in the background, creating GBTE, thinking about course completion tokens. There's also the one about presenting data, and that's something we're going to have to circle back to because I don't think it was sufficiently explored yet in this course. But in the same way, tokenomics is going to do that, right? If we have an idea for a tokenomics model, how can we test it together, right? What kind of math do we need to do? What kind of contracts can we write up and start to test? But at a really high level, the idea that's starting to form for the Gimbal token is that we want it to represent a kind of shared investment in each other. The reason to hold the Gimbal token would be that we believe in the stuff that we're building together, and we believe in its long-term prospects. And I'm excited to start from a place like that. There's a lot more to possibly say about that, but the reason I'm sharing it now is this course, just like the Dandelion infrastructure that already exists, is a starting place. It's real. People can look at it. People can work through this. All of you can decide how much value you think this is creating so far, and then start to think beyond Plutus PBL and Dandelion and into other things that we might want to explore as a community. But a lot of those ideas are going to take, other people to take leadership of those ideas. So I'm in no hurry to define what those things must be, but want to present the opportunity for everybody to take this as one example, and Dandelion as another, for how we start to really tangibly build up that belief in each other and that optimism about the future, right? I would hold a gimbal because I think that we're building some great stuff together. So I shared the agenda in Discord. I wanted to go through a couple of things that have been updated following the network respin. And I shared an agenda for tomorrow as well, but always want to start with Q&A. So I want to give this frame. This is going to be the frame for the next few weeks and probably even taking us through the end of this calendar year. The course is going to stay open for people to work through asynchronously, and whoever shows up, the invite is open for all of us to build on this stuff together, keep learning, keep defining new experiments. So maybe you've got questions about some of the things I just said, and I would love to address those questions. Maybe you've got technical questions about something you're working on in the class. So let's take a moment. If anybody's got anything, questions you have or insights to share, just shoot a hand up and feel free to jump in. Yeah, Roberto. Hey, man.
Hey, hi, James. I wanted to ask a while ago, there in one of the exercises, I'm not exactly sure, but I think it's one of the transactions. We're using the mesh API, and in the code, it's written as the first address, right? And it's the first like unused address or something. But I noticed when you stake an address, the first unused address is not the address that like holds the token, for example. It's just like you're unused, so it didn't match, and I couldn't find in mesh anything that was like match the address that holds this UTXO or something like that. Is there a way to do that?
Excellent. Was that with a contract interaction or one of the basic transactions?
Has to be one of the queries. I don't remember, but I'm gonna check right now. I'm gonna figure it out.
So, okay, I've been grappling with that same question and experimenting with it. And I have, some of my concerns have been alleviated just by practicing and seeing what happens, but I still don't feel fully confident about this, right? So in a browser wallet, like Eternal, as you're referencing, you might have multiple addresses derived from the same keys. And if you look at Cardano scan, you can see the summary of all the tokens that the base address holds, right? And like you said, they're looking at staking keys there. But the pub key hash for each of those addresses is unique. And for example, if we're building a contract that references a pub key hash, how are we going to know that the one, for example, an access token or a contributor token is coming from is the same one that's signing the transaction? And could that lead to any cases where we might have the wrong information about where to send a bounty to after it's completed? But it looks like, and let me think about, I gotta think about if there's well, let's look at the code. Let's take a quick look at this code. That would be,
I'm trying to remember if it was one of the components or if it was one of the pages.
Well, even the faucet component, if I look at just the faucet unlocking component, this is going to reference a connected address, the address of the connected browser wallet. And then it looks for the pub key hash of that wallet. Where is connected PKH set? Up here. So we use the mesh function, resolve payment key hash of the connected address. And then we put that in a redeemer. So if some people have seen this so far in just the Plutus code, or maybe you have used the front end for this part.
No, I don't see exactly the one I was referring to.
So yeah, this might not be the example you're talking about.
maybe it was updated with the latest changes. I don't know. I would need to look for it, but I think it's sort of what you were talking about anyways. It's kind of in that venue of I wasn't sure how to identify like match addresses with. I started thinking about how would you go about what is the relationship with an address in a UTXO? How do you identify those two? How do you match those two like as data?
Very good. No, that's a fabulous question. This is really important. So in my Eternal wallet, the UTXOs I hold might be at some set of many addresses, right? And so if I'm pulling in a UTXO, there's no guarantee that it's going to come from the address that is the connected address. But the way Mesh is handling this, yes, it has like that list of used and unused addresses. But this hook right here, and actually this is a little bit complicated to answer. This hook is a custom hook that I wrote, and we can go back and we can look at how it gets the connected address in just a moment. But there's going to be a need for another refactoring of this front end template when the next Mesh release comes out, probably within a couple days. They've already got the documentation drafted for the hooks they're releasing. So it's no longer going to be necessary to use the custom hook here or write your own. You're going to be able to just pull those hooks from the Mesh library itself, which is going to be really nice for usability. But let's take a look. Use wallet here is in contexts wallet. Let's take a look there. And when we set the connected address, right, we're going to use a use state hook. And we set the connected address, no matter what, to the first address, like index 0.
I think that's the one, yeah.
Okay. So this is, now you got to think about the implications of this. Okay. So no matter where the UTXO is coming from, the connected address is going to be the first one, the one at the top of the list. Okay. And what that means is that when we calculate the pub key hash of that address, it's going to be consistent. It's going to be the one that's actually signing off on the transaction. And so if we have a contract that requires a redeemer with a certain pub key hash that the outputs have to be sent to, right here, we're taking the pub key hash of that first indexed address. That's also the one that's displayed on the page. So if you're familiar with the front end template, you connect a wallet and at the bottom of the screen, you see the address. That's the connected address, right? The index 0.
Yeah.
And then the assets in the transaction that's being built right here are being sent to that connected address.
Mm-hmm.
So the combination of this piece right here and the pub key hash as it's defined above is going to satisfy the contract logic. Because it's going to say, okay, yeah, those assets are going to the address that is specified by this pub key hash right here.
Okay,
There's some magic going on under the hood, though, because when we say, all right, well, I want to send, let's look at assets to sender and access token to sender.
Yeah.
Right. I need this access token to trigger this transaction in the first place, right?
Yeah.
And it might be in a different address.
Exactly.
Right.
That was my issue.
That's the thing. Mesh is handling that part for us. It's abstracting this problem away, because what it's going to do, if I want to include this output in a transaction, it's different from on Cardano CLI. on Cardano CLI, I have to look for the UTXO with that asset, and I have to make sure I'm using it as one of my TXNs, right?
Yeah.
What Mesh does is it says, okay, well, this wallet, maybe it's a single address wallet, maybe it's a multi-address wallet, but in any case, if you're trying to send whatever particular asset, we're going to look in that wallet or set of addresses, right, for that asset, and we're going to pull that UTXO. The signature is going to be the same. So, right, it's a crazy thing, like, because it feels much easier in certain ways, right? Like, but it also feels confusing because so much is abstracted away if you've already been looking at Cardano CLI.
Right.
But because that's all happening under the hood, the UTXO is being pulled from whatever address it needs to be pulled from. The signing key for that HD wallet is signing off from whatever address it is. And then at the end of the day, even if my access token was at one of my other addresses for now, it's going to be sent back to that index 0 address at the end, which is going to satisfy the contract.
Okay. Okay. Must have done something wrong then.
But I'm not completely confident about this. Okay, I don't. I'm skeptical about using pub key hashes in contracts, and it's still, I don't have any evidence for this. It just feels like it's not going to work at certain times. So if you discovered a time when it doesn't work, we really should look at that. So if you encounter an error like that, I would love to look at it together.
Okay. This is from the faucet. Yeah, we have to do this again, right? We have to recompile this. Okay, that's a good chance to. Okay, perfect. I'll see if I'll find that.
Well, after Q&A, that's the first thing we're going to talk about is how much work everybody would have to do to get this up and running again. But let's skip to Nelson and finish Q&A, and then we'll jump right into that.
Thank you.
Nelson, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I can see some connection with this thing you're explaining to the problem that I have with burning tokens and not having extra funds to burn additional tokens. So when I'm creating that burn transaction, so the UTXO I'm taking, I think it's taking just one UTXO from the connected address, and that seems to be the problem. Like, what I thought was this use wallet was an inbuilt feature of Mesh. I just found out it isn't. So the address is fetched using that function. So that might be the case. I think I can see some connection between those two. I mean, we can look at this later, or it's like
that's incredibly helpful to think about. Yeah, I wouldn't want to like make you scramble right now, but do you think you could bring something for us to look at together tomorrow?
Yeah, I have it open now, but I don't like.
Do you want to look at it now? Happy to.
It's fine for me. Like, if there's no other agenda today.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, there's always an agenda. No, but let's take a look at that, because I think that'll help all of us think about what's going on here. Absolutely.
Okay. Just let me share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. So just this is the transaction, right? Simply this. So these ones are the things that Mesh provide us.
Mm-hmm.
But the address we're using is here, and it's fetched from this wallet.
Mm-hmm.
And this is from that function, right? Use wallet. So like, let me just say the problem again. The problem was that when we are burning some partial token, we do not have additional ADA to accommodate for the remaining tokens to be returned back to this to our address. So
Can
my
you look at, and actually, do you have, are you running this locally just to show people the front end for context?
but I don't think there's any token right now.
Oh, right, yeah, respin headaches. Don't worry about that right now then. Yeah, so I saw this issue you're describing. So you built something where it's easy, it works, burn tokens, right? If I have some, but I can only burn all of them.
Yes.
If I have 500 moose tokens and I try to burn 250 of them, this component doesn't yet work.
I can mint some tokens and see that, but maybe it'll take some time. Do you want to go ahead or
Is Hugo here today? Yeah, guy, for anybody who hasn't played with this yet, this is so awesome. You know, the minting component right here and the burning component. I encourage everybody to take both of these for a spin. Try to do some minting in the browser and then burn those tokens immediately. It's pretty cool. Okay, can we go back to the transaction build? And let's look at where you're adding outputs to this transaction. Right. If we're not going to burn everything,
yes,
the remaining tokens have to go somewhere.
Yeah.
So this is a case where you would need another output on the transaction. Okay. Just hold on one sec.
Oh, all right. So the chain's address doesn't handle tokens, right? Okay.
Exactly.
I
Exactly.
see.
So what you want to do, and here's the thing, right? You want to add a send assets to this transaction. So you've got burn asset, that's great. On line 107, in between the closing parenthesis and the colon, you would want dot send assets.
Here, right?
Yep. Sorry, yeah, dot send assets. And then what do you want to send? Well, maybe you want to send the leftover unburned tokens.
Okay.
And where do you want to send them? You want to send them back to the connected address is fine,
Yeah.
right?
I think I got it. I think I
You got it. Yeah, you'll have to do a little bit of JavaScript arithmetic
Yeah.
outside of the function. And then you can build, if you look at that example I was just sharing with the faucet unlocking, you'll see the example of setting up the assets to contract, which is an asset array type. And then you would put into it, the unit would be that asset you're trying to burn. The quantity would be from that arithmetic that you're doing. And if it's zero, it's zero. What's another nice thing about mesh is if it sees quantity zero, it'll just ignore that bit.
All right. Okay, let me try to get this
Cool.
through, and if it works, I'll
Yeah.
post the
That's
changes.
awesome. That's fun, dude. And yeah, if you figure it out between today and tomorrow, that'd be a fun thing to show that it now works.
Okay. Thanks, man.
Very
I'll
cool.
check this out. Yeah,
Cool.
I'll stop sharing.
Thanks. That was great. Curtis, your hand was up before that exploration.
No, it was when we're talking about the PKH from a multi or an HD wallet. I also don't know, and I'm curious to find out the specifics myself. But from what I did understand, it sounds like it takes the payment address from that, derives the staking key, and then from the staking key, it can basically say, here's a list of all addresses that are associated with that staking key, and then it can query for a UTXO present at any one of those. So it's that was my understanding of how it was able to find a UTXO when you don't really know what address it's at. It doesn't matter as long as you have the staking key. I just don't know the specifics as to why that's true.
Right, right. Well, so here's an example of a deeper exploration that might be worth a lesson or a module, right, in the course is, okay, so fine, I can open up Eternal. I can see that Eternal shows me the summary of all the assets in my wallet. I can go to Cardano scan and I can look at that collection of addresses and I can distinguish between which particular UTXOs are at which particular addresses, right? But there's a lot being abstracted away. Anytime you're looking at a summary of what's in a wallet, there's some stuff that you can't see happening under the hood. Should we, I mean, when we think about a roadmap for adding additional lessons, understanding how that works under the hood could be a really interesting thing for like a specialized module.
Yeah, one example was like you sent me the PBL summer access token. And, I moved around wallets quite a bit, but I sent it from my Eternal wallet back to my Eternal wallet using a different address and then import that wallet in NAMI and you won't see the token there.
Yes. Yep. That's probably a pretty cool little lesson to make as well. Just kind of give people a mystery to establish in a hands-on way the distinction between these wallets. That's really interesting. Look at it on NAMI, look at it in Eternal, look at it in Cardano scan, and hey, why the heck isn't everything showing up in NAMI? Hey, Dagwell.
Hey, good conversation as always. How you guys doing today?
Good to see you, dude.
Good, man. So glad. So, I got a little interesting tidbit to add to that, and then I have a question. So I'm running this script where it's just like a minting script, and every time something comes in, it takes the UTXO and it shoots out the address that it's coming from. And let me tell you guys this: I sent it from Eternal, I sent it from a bunch of different wallets, and here's the cool part: my program always reports the same address. Same address. It's always a payment address. And I just want to throw something. I just want to throw that out there. It's very interesting because when I'm running and I'm sending tests from my wallet, I know that it's mine because I see that it's from the same address. So right now I'm using Blackfrost to query the UTXO, and whatever UTXO it queries, it gives me the same address. And this is kind of weird because this address was an old school address that I got from NAMI back in the day. I put it over to Eternal. Everyone did for a second there. And when I got that wallet, the same wallet that address reports whenever I have to do anything UTXO, it's that single address that I got from NAMI way back in the day. And then also, if I send it from another address, because I want to send it from multiple addresses, it'll register the same address. So I don't know if I don't know that when you query from Blockfrost a UTXO, does it give you that one payment address that you might use if you're connecting to a DApp, and you got that one that you always use, and I don't know. That's just some experience stuff that I'm throwing in there. I do got another question though. I can mint all day long handling the UTXOs, and we have a good system, kind of got like a little layer where they'll sit, you know what I mean? So we can take care of them when they come. But here's my thing, and it's kind of relevant to what we were talking about. Let's say I have a bundle of, 1 million coins at one UTXO. Okay, so I'm coming in, and let's say a UTXO comes to my layer, and I'm like, okay, based on here, I'm going to do this with that UTXO. And then let's say the end result is like, I'm going to send back a certain amount of coins to this person. Let's say, okay, you sent me two, I'm going to send you $1.50 back to hold the tokens, like a claim portal, pretty much. So here's my thing. I could have 10 million coins held by like 2 ADA. You know what I mean? You know, so like every time I interact with that, I got a messy ass UTXO situation, which I know everybody is running into. If I'm minting, I can coast it. Not a problem. I can figure out, I can U-turn, go, 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 go. But when it comes to handling actual assets, oh my goodness, that's it.
Which raises the question, where's the line between a good messy or a good UTXO situation and a messy UTXO situation?
Gosh, yes.
Like how do you define a good UTXO situation?
For me, I'll tell you what I would like it to be. I would like it to be something that when I interacted with, gave me a deterministic UTXO and ID to use for the next transaction. Really, because you know what I'm saying? Because I'm going to have multiple people using this UTXO. And then there's going to, you know, I could put all the money in the world on it. I could put it on a UTXO that has 1,008 on it. But am I going to be able to give the next TXID to submit that next transaction? In my current situation, maybe it's something I'm missing. That's why I'm bringing it.
So you get a transaction hash before submitting, but you have to at least build the prior transaction, right? You have to build the transaction to get the TX hash. So it's possible to know it before submitting.
Because right now,
I guess if that's possible, it is deterministic, right? If you know what all the inputs to a transaction are going to be, and you know all the outputs, you can calculate the hash.
Oh gosh, yes, of course. I could set up a logic equation that after this runs, add this to the TXID, which will give me the right one for the next one, which should keep it moving like sweet.
But how far down the road can you go with that, and would you trust it?
Exactly. And you know, the system, my main runner that I'm running this off of, I trust it as long as people either send what they're going to send or something where they can receive a refund, where there's enough meat on the transaction to get something back, you know? And this is V1, so I'm not saying it's like forever, but I want to look at it because there are some advantages that this solution offers. So I want to kind of take that and mix like, okay, I can get you something back really fast. Now you can use it in this I mean, who am I talking to, bro? So I just want something to be able to distributing assets are kind of, you know. Thank you guys.
This is cool. You know, one of the things we assumed would be part of this course, and before Abdel Karim and Jingles got so busy building mesh out, we were talking about building up a specialized module about coin selection algorithms. And that's an example of something that's not built yet, but would be a wonderful deep dive to explore. So that's like talking roadmap. It's hard to say where that goes, but if that's an idea that lights anybody's fire, that's a great example of something that would be nice to have in the future. As an exercise, it's also a really valuable thing to think for yourself about what is the ideal UTXO situation. And if you can Google the question coin selection, or you could even more specifically Cardano coin selection. And there's some really nice threads on GitHub with people debating the merits of each approach and even debating the definition of a good UTXO situation. And it's fascinating, right? One could argue that, you know, only one native asset should be in each UTXO. Maybe I never want to have a situation where one UTXO has multiple native assets, because moving forward, that makes certain things easier, right? Some people would say, well, you can mix them because that frees up more ADA that could be used in in native asset free UTXOs for things like collateral and transaction fees. And in fact, when you take that approach, often you'll encounter less errors. So it's interesting. There's some rough consensus on certain ideas, but there's absolutely still open questions. And for anybody who's just, wants a little exercise, that probably, you could probably do this in an hour or so. Try to write a little bash script that takes your address and rearranges your UTXOs in a way that you're happy with. So any case, that's lots of possible things to look at. I'm looking at the chat. Justin,
Thank you, James.
TXID as a redeemer. That, Justin, do you want to say more about that one? I don't know if you are in a place where you can speak right now.
Yeah, no, I just don't think I was fully understanding the, I guess, Dagwell's point. I think maybe there's some context I was missing, but yeah, I think now that after I hear you read my own question, that the issue is not knowing the next TXID that needs to be input. So yeah, I guess my proposed solution doesn't really solve that.
There was such a big, like, that was one of the, some of you might be aware of the list of like social media controversies about Cardano that have happened over the last year. But one of my favorites was the capital C concurrency issue, right? Oh, you can't do multiple things at once on Cardano. And it's true to the extent that it's hard to know a TX hash some number of transactions in the future. And so if you're going to have multiple people interacting with a contract where that contract is built to only hold, say, one UTXO, it's hard to run multiple parallel transactions. But it's just not a hard problem to solve, because you take this as a given of the network, and part of system design is thinking about, well, how is my contract address going to hold UTXOs? Right now, the faucet contract that you've been learning about in this course, let's put that back up on the screen here for a sec. This contract right here assumes, well, this is the front end for interacting with it. But let's jump. This is GBTE. Here we go. This contract assumes that there's always going to be one UTXO at the contract address. But part of the reason, and this is where we kind of get into some deeper stuff, part of the reason this is built this way is because it's a starting point. I've always, as a mathematician, I've always loved the idea of proof by induction. And if you're not familiar with the concept, if you can define where a pattern starts and how to get from step n to n+1, you can prove a lot of stuff about the general nature of that pattern, right? So here's your base case. Here's the starting point. But this wouldn't scale. The way this contract is implemented right now, if anything more than one person tried to hit it at the same time, that would lead to a problem, right? Because they both can't spend the same UTXO. So whoever gets it first, even by a fraction of a second, they're going to have a successful transaction, but the other person, their transaction is going to fail. And now they've got to wait for the submission and for that transaction to be included on chain so that we can see the next TX hash. So what's the answer? Well, first of all, don't write this into a contract. Expected only one faucet output, right? This is just keeping that contract manageable with exactly one UTXO, but it's not scalable. And in order to build a scalable system, you'd have to build a contract that maybe it didn't well, it could still do this part actually, right? Because it would be sending one UTXO back to the contract, but more on the orchestration side, whether that's in the front end or an instance of the PAB or by some other mechanism. You might want to build a system so that there's always some number of UTXOs, depending on your use case, 5 or 25 or 100 or whatever, unique UTXOs at a contract address. And when somebody hits that faucet, right? If I have 1 million tokens in an address, maybe 50,000 of them are at each of 20 UTXOs. And when somebody comes to take a withdrawal, they get one of those, right? Take the part they're withdrawing, and that gets put back in. So there's ingenuity required, but it's not, you got to understand the problem, but it's not too difficult a thing to create once you just think about it and you build that system out. Yeah, batching, Justin, exactly. Batching, that's something that we haven't covered in this course yet and would be a great, I think, specializing module to build. Exactly. Yep. I know. And like, hey, thanks for pointing that out. A lot of these solutions are not open source. That's why it's our responsibility to get together and keep deciding what open source solutions we want to build. Yeah. And Curtis, exactly, right? Whatever system we define, there's going to be trade-offs. This is awesome. Thank you for these points. And Dagwell, I'm glad you're thinking about that. If you like I said to Nelson, if you ever want to present anything on that, it would be such a privilege to kind of see what you're working on and to bring other people into that work. Okay, so anybody else have questions? Take a quick look here. Okay. Now I noted this in a video earlier this week. And then, you know, as we're all aware, this respin happened. So basically, testnet magic 1, right? That's still what we're going to use to interact with pre-prod. All the config files have been updated. So I hope people have those, and I hope you've been able to just run the new pre-prod network and to sync it up. If I made keys, right? If I made a key pair to generate a pre-prod address with testnet magic 1, the address that I would have gotten from any set of keys won't change. And so that's the case if I'm working with vkey and skey files in a terminal, or even with Eternal on pre-prod. When I opened up Eternal over the weekend, they already had it running such that my address was already loaded in. It was just empty of UTXOs, right? Because the whole thing had been reset. So this extends to contracts too. If you compiled a Plutus script previously and you built an address for it, all of that contract logic and that address are still valid. All you have to do is remint the tokens, which, by the way, are going to have the same policy ID as before, because probably your script didn't change, right? So you remint tokens with the same policy ID, you lock them at the same contract address, and just like that, you're up and running again. In fact, I didn't remove anything from the front end repo. Okay, so this is the front end template. People have been sharing. Every time anybody has shared their Plutus script, you submitted your Plutus code to this folder right here. I merged those changes. Some of you, thank you for recognizing this, also derived the address and shared that. But if you didn't, I took care of that. That wasn't part of the assignment. And then added these to the Cardano folder, Plutus PBL pre-prod faucet list. And nothing has been removed from here. All right, so everybody who has completed this assignment previously your contract address and the Plutus core are still here. Let me pause right there. Curtis, what do you think?
Yeah, I just had a thought the other day on this. I'm wondering if we should change the instruction a bit to have them put it on the top of the list, right? Because I can kind of see if we do end up getting hundreds of committers to this, and right now it seems to be adding to the bottom, that they have to scroll all the way down, whereas the people that are kind of done with this course are at the top. So I wonder if we just shift the order. Just a random thought, sorry.
Let's add a little bit of documentation, just showing people to search this file, right? Wherever you are in the list, you can control F for your address, right? Just to confirm that it's here. And then you could even though this is a very long string right here, you could control F for your CBOR code, right? Just to make sure it's in this array. And in fact, that's how the front end is working. Let's go back into here. Registered faucets. So look at what happens here. There's a query, just a GraphQL query via Dandelion that looks at this metadata key, the one that was defined here, and the one that you submitted to as the final step in this project. It gets all the transactions, and that the value, right? The idea of this assignment is to follow a standard so that in that metadata, you're sharing certain information about your contract instance. That's then placed in this type is defined, faucet metadata result, that has all of the following fields, including the contract address that was shared in the metadata. Then we look through the array of faucet metadata, right? So, right, we set up a, where's metadata results? We set up an empty array of faucet metadata results. For each one, we grab the details and we push that to metadata results. And then we map, well, first we filter over those and we remove any wrong ones, because I made a mistake on this. A couple other people had to do it more than once, right? So we can remove any of those. There's nothing in that revocation list right now because we're starting over. And then we map over those and we say, okay, for each of those, what are we going to do? Well, and I forget if it's in this file or now. I think we have to look at the unlocking component. Yeah, we do. Okay, so we map over and then we pass the faucet details, right, to the unlocking component. Let's look at this unlocking component next. Whoops, I have to go to the components folder. Where am I? I'm in the right spot. Okay. Faucet unlocking component with metadata. Okay, so now, two things happen with that contract address. First of all, those props are passed from that React component. And we look for faucet instance.contract address, and we set that as the contract address we're going to use. And then we query that address, again, using GraphQL to get the UTXOs at that contract address. And that fires down here. But the other thing, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry for disturbing you. But
oh, you're good.
Thank you, man. I had a really quick question on that. So when this is in my brain, I can't make this connection. Okay, I know how to query, I know how to get the information, but using it like building the form to where you get that information, you can use it. And okay, I'm done. I think that's what you're explaining.
Keep going. No, finish that question.
Yeah, okay. So I can set up the form, but like, for instance, I need to be able to query like the exact same spot on a metadata, so the same place, so it'll be the same like whatever dot image, but for different users as they come in, you know, so making it kind of dynamic. So it's not hard coded, but it reads what is coming in, and that's what I need, man. Gosh.
I've been relatively, I think, low key about the design pattern being presented here, but I'm really excited about it. I believe that this design pattern or something like it is the key to building distributed applications that run on any number of instances and yet provide a unified user experience. Okay, and here's what I mean by that. We're doing this with the example of faucets right now, something relatively simple, right? A token gated faucet. If you completed this assignment, you learned a little bit of Plutus. How do I unlock using an access token with a validator, some other tokens? And that's a primitive design pattern that's meant to be built upon. And everybody created their own instance of it. At the end of the day, there's a web page, and there's only one on it right now because I re-registered mine, and we'll get back to this in just a second. But if you remember this from before, there was this one unified page where there were all these instances, and don't worry about the design here is silly on purpose, right? I'm not sure that these, you know, that this would pass a designer's test, but that's not the point. The point is we're going to have this list of instances on this page. To the general user of the internet, it's going to look like a single unified thing, but every div you see right here has a different owner. It has a different administrator. And there's even a different set of rules. Those rules for now are relatively trivial. Specify a datum number, right? That's not doing much in terms of function, but datum can do a lot more than that. And you're specifying how many can be unlocked at once. Again, trivial in this case, but this is meant to give you something to think about. Now, every one of these has its own rules. Every one of these is privately administered by a sovereign developer. And yet, on the front end, it's a unified experience for end users, okay? This I think is really, really important, okay? And we're using metadata to provide this, but I think there's going to be other design patterns to discover. But the idea is, think about now GBTE, if you've been thinking about that application. GBTE is meant for anybody to pick it up and create their own instance of a treasury. They could use gimbals or they could use whatever other token they want to. People are going to be issuers of their own treasuries. People are going to be listing their own bounties, and they're going to have their own ideas for what work needs to be done. But there can still be many single websites that display any or all of the existing instances of a GBTE. No matter who owns them, you can give end users a single place to come look, even though there's no single owner to that Dapp. So that's something I could talk about that all day. And I don't know how much that's resonating with people right now, but this is something that I believe in deeply and want to push. I think this is something that's very unique. Any questions about that right there? Just checking the chat. Busy days, people got to go. I love the gradient. But yes, headless Dapps. Headless Dapps is the point. Don't let the gradient distract you, you know. Faucet token. Yeah, okay. And you'll need to remint the token, but you might not have to change anything about the policy ID. You might not have to change anything about your contract. You can use the one that's already compiled. And in fact, this didn't feel too useful when we made it, because one of your assignments was to build this transaction. But guess what? When I re-registered my faucet, I just used this form right here. whoops, not get out of here. Yeah, I use a Web 2 password manager. I just used this form right here to re-register my my faucet, and this is all I had to do. I didn't need to know CLI to re-register this thing. Okay. So this is, I hope you'll all take a look at this, and I would love to hear from people how quickly this is done. I'm hoping this might only be like 8 minutes of work to get your instance of a faucet to pop back up on this page. And so going back to the code we were looking at, because this, I want to get back here. This is that component with the gradient background, okay? It's querying whatever address was specified in the props that were passed to each one. Remember, we're just mapping over some metadata results. And then, where does it happen? We have a contract address. Oh, here we got the Plutus script, which is also a hook. And so where is the Plutus script set? Down here. So we say, okay, if the faucet list, right, which is, where did faucet list come from? It was imported from that list of addresses and CBOR that we were just looking at, right? So faucet list, if the faucet list has an address in it equal to what was passed to this component. Oh no, this is the one that, oh yeah, Trevor just added this bit. This is the piece I wanted to show you. This is a double check, but this is the piece right here. We say, okay, look for the one that has this asset in it and pick and this contract address, and whatever contract address matches that script. So you're basically cycling through, shoot, I should have left another tab open for that. Let me get back to that real quick. Right? You're just filtering through this list to find the object with the matching address. And when you find it, that script CBOR becomes the script that's in play for that component. Okay, just filtering through here after you get the address. Questions about that piece right there?
Oh, so that doesn't really have to be. I'm just thinking about my situation. That could almost be anything, right? That could be, it could be anything that you need to select, just contract. Okay. And then you can just select any one you need from a list. Oh, okay. Okay. So that's hard coded. Just have a page with all the things lit. Oh gosh. Thank you, sir.
Start here, play with this, and hopefully have some new ideas for how to use this. This is incomplete. I could talk about this all day, right? About the possible applications of this, but I hope I've at least given you enough to start playing around with this and what else might be. And here's the other thing about this project. This project is meant to help us think better about what Plutus V2 is providing. Because once we're doing this, when we refactor this as a Plutus V2 project, and the logic is already there, it's on GitLab, you can find it. I'll pull it up in just a second if anybody needs it. But think about, we don't have to have a list like this anymore. We could just have a list of reference UTXOs now. And no longer are people going to need to, no longer is there even going to be a need to make a Git merge request and keep a file like this in the front end template. Instead, we can change the metadata that's being collected. This is the specific page. Let me just, it's worth it to jump back into this. Hold on one sec. currently the metadata that we're using specifies the following fields. But if you just add the TX hash of a reference UTXO, now there's no longer a need for any management of this in the front end repo. You throw that reference UTXO in here. It's all taken care of. Curtis.
How would you then manage the blacklist? Right, because aren't you
Hey,
kind of using that
beautiful.
one file as your blacklist?
Yeah, so right now, how does the revocation list work? That happens on the page, doesn't it? Yeah, I left the empty revocation list here. And so currently this is revoking any entry with a TX hash. And that TX hash is actually the hash of the registration transaction itself. Okay. So what we're able to, that wouldn't have to change at all, actually, right? If I add a field here, I can still ignore any entries. All right, I'm just checking the agenda. So that was, we did Q&A, and that was item 2 in the agenda. Let's do a quick spin through items 3 and 4, but please be sure, just please interrupt me if we need to come back to any of this stuff. I wanted to give a quick update on the initial intro to GBTE. That's part of project 303. This has all been updated, and there is now T Gimbal in a live instance of this on the new pre-prod testnet. Okay. But because everything had to be rebuilt anyway, I took the opportunity to update a couple of things. One, oh, right, that's different. Right, sorry, this was changed. Back to the faucet contract for just a second, and I mentioned this in Discord, so you probably know this already. It's no longer the PPBL Summer 2022 token. Now it's the PPBL 2022 Access token, just because I didn't want newcomers to the course to think they were really late because it's not Summer 2022 anymore. So just a little bit more current there, and pointing to the purpose of that token, which is to provide access to different smart contracts. I actually need to remint. If anybody shared an address here to get a contributor token on pre-prod, I'm going to send these back out right after this meeting. Okay, and you'll need one of these to interact with the new version of GBTE. But I also took the opportunity to make some much needed updates to this contract. There was a really lazy solution that probably shouldn't have been part of people's introduction to Plutus. Thanks for bearing with it. This is a much better design pattern than before because it uses a parameterized redeemer instead of just a double bar or to distinguish between two different ways of interacting with the contract. So that's a really helpful upgrade right there. A more substantial upgrade is that we are no longer checking for the pub key hash of an issuer, but instead adding another token to this DApp. So now, in addition to the contributor access token, there's going to be one or more issuer tokens that can be used to sign off on both treasury management and on any interactions with live bounties, whether you're distributing, updating, or canceling. Each of these are going to require the issuer token to validate. not 100% confident that this was the right decision. I think there's a lot to be said about associating a wallet with some kind of rights, but it felt limiting to me. And so I wanted to play with this for a little while. What if we use issuer tokens instead? Let me pause right there. Just anybody have initial questions or clarifying questions about what I shared so far? I think this is going to be a really nice thing to have because the issuer is going to be able to make sure they're managing the treasury from a few different spots, right? One example I found that was limiting about pub key hashes is I wanted to be able to sometimes manage a treasury from the back end, right? Distribute a bunch of UTXOs with a quick shell script, right? But it's also really nice to have a front end to manage a treasury. And that's in fact one of the early bounties. The newest GBTE front end doesn't yet have treasury management transactions built in, because those are going to be really, really nice ways for anybody who wants to learn more about the system to learn about it. So this gives us the ability, if you are the issuer of a treasury, to either send that token back and forth, or maybe you want to make 2 of those tokens for yourself, right? If you're instantiating your own and you want to do some sorts of treasury management from the CLI and other sorts from a front end, you're going to be able to do that now. But there's new implications for this, right? And we have to decide together, does this feel secure enough to anybody to show, to provide treasury management via a token instead of a pub key hash? Yeah, Nelson, you can. Yes. Anybody have thoughts? Does this feel more or less secure to you in any way?
I'm actually trying to figure out if this is possible, because that does require, right? Somebody has to mint those issuer tokens, right? And is it that they themselves can mint the issuer token?
That's
So
right.
who starts it, right? It's almost, to me, it's like the chicken, the egg. Are you the one that creates these issuer tokens to start with? And then once they have it, now they can take on that responsibility?
When you compile the contract now, you're going to specify that issuer policy ID. So as the party who is initially filling a treasury with whatever tokens, you get to decide what those tokens are. That's your bounty token right here. You get to decide on what the policy ID, and like we've been talking about with the course completion tokens, what the rules are for getting an access token or a contributor token. And then the same thing with treasury issuer. So yeah, the simplest case of this, one party, right? One person with some tokens spinning up a bounty. You would mint these tokens or pull up these tokens from somewhere, but maybe mint these new, right? And you would certainly want to give yourself an issuer token, but you could make more if you wanted to. Nelson, what do you think?
For a moment, if we forget about all the security concerns and all, we can make an instance of the GBTE such that this policy ID is not required, and the way we registered in the faucet using metadata, we can create an instance of the GBT where people using metadata can mint the on issuer tokens and all of them can come together, right?
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So there's everything you just said is true. And it's possible, especially with some of the mesh minting stuff that I hope you've seen their new guide. And if anybody hasn't had a chance yet, I recommend taking a look at App Wallet. Minting unsecure minting is trivial, but like you said, the toughest work ahead is figuring out that in-between part. Okay, well, how do I ensure that only the people I want to have an issuer token or a contributor token can get one? That's where we've got the most innovation to do. And I think there's going to be several right answers to that question. Dagwell, what do you think?
I love it. For one, I've been thinking about this, and especially when you consider that you can distribute in a raffle, however you want to do it, a certain amount of tokens, and then you can just have certain tokens that you can use as input to claim something else. I really love what this opens up. I had a quick question. I'm looking at this, and I had a solution in my head. Not sure it's going to work. Let's say if I had that T bounty policy IDs and we're using them as input tokens, and we have the token name T Gimbal. So since that has like 7 spaces on it or something of that nature, can I, for bounty token, can I do 7 low dashes and just make sure that I have every one of my names have 7 letters on them? And that way I can have on the front end a handle to move them around, and then my validator will validate them. Do you think that will work?
Oh, you're blowing my mind. I don't know. I'll try.
Yeah. I'm gonna try it. I know. I've had so much to do. I've just been lazy. I'm gonna get on that today. And I think if I can do that, then it helps with my random. I think it helps with everyone's random, because you got to handle the play with stuff on the front end. And then when you submit your transaction, you can just throw it through. And as long as it has the right policy ID and it has the right amount of spaces. So
That's right. This is a key thing. And so you notice right here that for the bounty token, it's got to be gimbals, right? Or whatever, right? And maybe some people can probably think of some use cases where you would want to delete this line and the bounty token name doesn't matter. But you'll notice that there's no names specified for the access token or the treasury issuer, because we want each of these to have a different name. I want to know which access token committed to each bounty. I want to know if there's more than one, which issuer managed the treasury or approved a certain bounty. And so in this case, we wouldn't want to specify only one name. We just want to specify the policy. And if you have the token with that policy, the name on it is going to help us kind of track who's doing what in the system. But yeah, I think there's a lot of creative work to do in terms of thinking about the different instances of these tokens that are going to be minted, and even what the names mean. That's really cool. Curtis, what do you think?
I'm going to apologize ahead of time for this. I'm just kind of brainstorming, but because I don't see the problem present here, this seems to make sense. But like in, say, Snapbilia's case, we're running into an issue where minting these NFTs to, say, thousands of people that give them access to the platform is very costly. So we're trying to think of new ways, right, to handle that access or gate that access without an actual NFT. So I'm curious if this would play out or make any sense. What if you had a multi-sig, right, address and any multi-sig? So any of these PKHs have access to this multi-sig, and then there's some UTXOs that live in there that contain data, and that datum is the key into this platform. So instead of minting necessarily a NFT, you're just granting them access to the multi-sig, which has the datum, and that datum is used as a key instead. Does that complicate things, or?
That's worth its own session. I think we absolutely ought to explore that, because you're right. I mean, so two things to the cost, both from min UTXO and transactions to running a system like this. Some instances of any system like this will be valuable enough that those min UTXO costs and transaction fees are worth it, right? For the use of that system. But there's going to be other cases where maybe the ADA, or in the long run, whatever, valuable network token is necessary to run something where it may be prohibitively expensive given the amount of rewards that need to be distributed. And so on the one hand, we may start to understand, like, hey, just because I can do something, I also have to consider, is it creating enough value that it's worth those transaction fees and min UTXOs? And then we get to the question you're saying, like, okay, well, is there a lower cost way to do this? For example, with metadata like that. And this is where, so the next item on my agenda for today, I think there's more to say here. We can come back to it if we need to. But if anybody hasn't yet explored, well, SIP 67 is kind of a supporter for this. But if you haven't yet looked at SIP 68, I strongly recommend it. This has, I believe, instant relevance to the course completion token, specifically when it comes to the fact that we've recognized that some people might want to get a completion token when they have some minimum mastery levels, but then they complete more mastery levels later and they want that to be represented. Or even more interesting to me, after you've earned your course completion token and you've completed a bunch of early bounties, maybe there should be some record of what you've accomplished associated with your completion token. And this gives us a way to start thinking about it. This is also worth at least one full live coding session, maybe more. There's some really juicy stuff here. And so I recommend, in preparation for us getting together to talk about this, people hacking away, just at least read this, maybe run some experiments, but I am very excited to play around with this and see if certain ideas work out. And if anybody wants to do that, just let me know. I would love to hang out in the garage and screw around with this at some point. Yep. And don't even get me started about naked discos with new traits being added to them. All right. Okay, a lot more implications to possibly talk about. I'm not in a hurry to go anywhere, but I also recognize that we're at the regular time to close out this meeting. So if you got to go, I'm not going to add anything new today, but if anybody wants to stick around just to talk about this bit right here, or to talk about the new the updates to the GBTE, just let me know. My immediate next step is to send out contributor tokens so that people can use the new version of GBTE. And if you need one of these, I should post this form again on Discord, but I'm going to put this in the chat just in case you need one. Just a pre-prod address and whatever alias you want on your token, and I'll get that out to you. If anybody is willing to stick around, can I throw an extension of this idea right here at everybody? If you're still here, I'm just going to start talking. Okay. So here we go. So, okay. I want to think about a third contract for the GBTE. The GBT front end. This one has the picture in it. Okay, so far GBTE consists of two contracts, the treasury and the escrow. And it consists of three transactions, right? The one where the issuer locks tokens, the one where the contributor commits to a bounty, locking their deposit token in escrow, along with tokens from the treasury. And then finally, the distribution part. The work is complete, and both the access token and the reward tokens go back to the contributor. Let's pull those next to each other. This treasury issuer token creates new opportunities to think about getting the functionality of multi-sig separate from multi-sig addresses. And so a couple of us were talking yesterday. Multi-sig is great. We learned about it from Kyle last week, and it's an extremely valuable tool, and it's always going to have a place. And in fact, this thought experiment that I want to propose actually kind of helps me understand some advantages of multi-sig. But the case I keep coming back to that bugs me about multi-sig is that you still have to have some way to collect witnesses. And that requires some other service, right? The transaction needs to be broadcast to signers somehow, and witnesses have to be sent back to all be collected in the final transaction before it's submitted somehow. That's going to require a microservice. Okay. Yeah, Nelson.
Yeah, well, for this multisig, I had one question regarding that.
Yeah.
When we did it the last time, it was one witness, then we created a transaction that is not completely signed, and the other witness, the next witness signed over it, right? So is that the only way, or can the original draft be distributed to everyone and all the witness can be combined later on? Like there is no first person doing the sign.
We have to double check that, but yeah, my understanding of the way it works is if you need to collect 5 signatures, you can broadcast what needs to be witnessed to all 5 people. They can all provide that witness, and then you collect those together. But I might be wrong about that. And this,
No,
this is,
that's
I haven't
100%
seen
correct.
it.
That's 100% right.
oh, but this still is the challenge, right? That the reason I haven't tested that yet is that it just doesn't, to me, it's like, okay, you've got this protocol running. You can have tokens on it that are already on the protocol, and we already have infrastructure for sending those around. It seems a little bit unreasonable at scale to need some other system for passing those transactions around. And again, this isn't to say that multi-sig never has a purpose. Absolutely does. I mean, there's nothing more secure than it if we were all working, you know, within walking distance from each other. If we were all working in the same room, multi-sig is awesome, right? Pass around the key, or just use the local area network, right? But sending these things, it's secure to send, you know, raw transactions and witnesses across the internet. It's just inconvenient, and it requires some other platform. Yeah, Justin, that's where I'm going. Exactly. So here's what I'm just trying to, I want to play with this. If for no other reason, I want to play with this because maybe it'll expose to us the miracle of why multi-sig addresses really are the best way to go. Maybe we'll just realize some limitations. But I can't help wondering if I can use an issuer token to represent approval of the distribution of some bounty. First of all, it's trivial to make a 1 of n approval policy. How would I do it? I make one policy ID right here, and I mint n tokens with that policy ID, and I spread them around. One person who has one of those treasury issuer tokens, they can do the distribution. 1 of n is trivial. 2 or more of n signatures is where it gets really interesting. If 8 people hold a token with this policy ID, how can we build a system that requires 3 signatures from those 8 treasury token holders? And I think there's a few different ways to do it, but I'm curious to think about a validator that helps us handle that. And it would basically be slotted into this step right here. Now, before I keep going with my ideas, does that make anybody think in any direction? Can we use an LP token that we could track and use to release? Yeah, exactly. Okay, so this is right. Let's think about a bad solution to this. It would be easy to build another contract that collects the issuer tokens themselves, right? All right, 3 people have to throw their issuer token into this contract address. Once there's 3 there, we would refactor the escrow contract so that it must receive issuer tokens from this. Mix yesterday called it a gatekeeper contract, right? From the gatekeeper contract. And when it gets the required number of issuer tokens in a transaction from the gatekeeper contract, that constitutes an approval of the distribution. Can you see the glaring problem with this approach? One thing, one could back out, right? If 2 people put their tokens there, but none of the other 6 are willing to be the 3rd, then we would need a way to say, okay, well, not everybody approved. We didn't get the sufficient approvals, so we have to send those issuer tokens back. That's one problem. But there's an even more practical problem, which is who would specify. That would be just like the treasury issuer is going to specify the rules for contributor tokens. They're going to specify the rules for issuer tokens. And so here, a quick detour from the idea I'm sharing here. Another thing to recognize, and I think this is a really special thing about this idea of headless Dapps, many instances, many owners, right? Gimbal Labs is simply never going to have one massive instance of a GBTE, right? We're never going to have an overwhelming amount of tokens in a single instance. What we'll do is start playing with an instance for this line of work, an instance for that one. And no matter what the context, the beauty of this is that the life cycle of a GBT instance can be limited to a project, right? So even if there was a catastrophic failure of trust, and that's, accounting for that is another question. But this is a question that happens in any group of people who agree to trust each other and collaborate, right? Even if there is that huge failure of trust and somebody goes rogue and drains a treasury completely, that adverse effect would be limited to the scope of the project, not the scope of the whole organization. Okay, there's a lot more to say on that, but imagine time-bound instances. And imagine, okay, yeah, you've got a treasury issuer token for this project that's going to last the next 3 months, right? So when you get that issuer token, it's not somebody saying, hey, I trust you now and I trust you forever. It's, hey, I trust you enough to be a treasury issuer for the next 3 months, which to me is a much more approachable thing to ask of people. Back to this bit here. For me, the biggest problem with the trivial approach I just suggested is that it's extremely inefficient, right? If we have a multi-sig address and I need to witness a bunch of transactions, everything I just said is still true about needing to pass those files around. But at the end of the day, if I am one of the signers and there are, 10 bounties coming across my desk, I can sign all of them very quickly. Just take a few minutes, sign all of them, send them along, we're good. If we're using issuer tokens locked to the contract address, well, I got to deposit my issuer token into the contract, wait for the requisite number of issuers, that bounty gets distributed, we all get our issuer tokens back. Okay, I got my issuer token back, I'm going to put it in the contract again for the next one, and so on and so forth. And I hope you can see that this would be a silly and inefficient way of doing this. So that's why I love Dagwell's idea. This is what I want to think about with everybody moving forward is, yeah, here's a really cool instance of a minting validator application that I can use my issuer token to trigger the minting of a temporary token that really its life cycle is only to live in that gatekeeper contract for the time it takes to collect the signatures. Once those tokens have been collected, cool, that fires off the distribution approval, and I can use my single issuer token to create those 10 approvals, just like I could for multi-sig. So this is just something I'm thinking about. Haven't started writing it yet, but just playing around with the idea for now and trying to imagine what multi-issuer treasury would look like from a token perspective. And we might in the long run find out that some treasury issuers want multi-sig and others want to take this convenient token solution. I think it's worth going down both roads. Could we evade some trust issues, set amount of minted tokens? Yeah, exactly, right? I think time bounding things is just a really practical approach to the fact that it's hard to know if you can trust somebody forever, right? Trevor, what do you think?
Yeah, so I've just been thinking through this and keeping in mind here that I'm still very new to a lot of the Plutus logic and what we can do in there. But it kind of got me thinking about different ways. I mean, a lot of these problems kind of come back to, what information can be stored on chain and securely linked to a specific address or signing key or what have you. And so with Plutus v2 having a lot of these options for like inline datum and storing everything from datums to contracts referenceable on chain, it started getting me thinking about like what are ways if you can just put anything in a datum, right? Any kind of information, like what are some ways, or is there a way, it's probably a better way of asking this, of being able to take information in a datum and have a contract be able to reference, metadata off of, any kind of reference UTXO, be that in the contract or whatever else, to say like, hey, this definitely came from this wallet. Like, essentially, rather than having to mint one-time tokens, we can just reference a UTXO once. Is it possible for a contract to know like, hey, this, 1 ADA UTXO that was sent here was sent from a token holder, and that can represent approval, and
Wow.
something along those lines. Or, potentially we talked about ways of passing around, a way to get signed approval from everybody in a multi-sig situation. This wouldn't be practical, but if a signed transaction is just or even an unsigned transaction is just a CBOR hex, that could be, you know, attached to a transaction, a near empty transaction, right? And just sent from one wallet to the next asking for, you know, and then added after. That's obviously impractical, but is it possible to attach something that is signed to a UTXO that a contract could reference? And therefore, if it's signed, you know where it came from. I don't know if that's even possible or if that makes sense to think about, but that's just what's been going through my head.
Yeah. Message signing is going to be a big deal too. That's a lot of what you're describing is talked about in CIP 8. So Giovanni presented a bit on this a couple weeks ago. And I'm pretty sure that a lot of us haven't fully appreciated the power right here. And so, yeah, what you're saying, I think this is also worth a deep exploration and to see if we can solve these problems that way. By the way, so the Cardano Summit speaker voting app, Roberto helped to build that, and it was fully built on CIP 8. So anybody who used that app, it was a pretty interesting experience because you did have to hook up your web wallet, Nami or Eternal or whatever, and then you were signing, you were using your signature, but not sending any value. But the way they presented, or the way they were preventing an attack, because it's so easy to spin up any number of wallets, and if there's no value being spent, the cost is only time to vote many, many times with all of your different wallets. They decided to hook up phone numbers, right, to that system. So you had to hook up your wallet, present your phone number, get, you know, that verification key that a lot of Web 2 apps use, and then that was associated with your wallet, and then you could sign from there. And that's a lot of the team building that was not satisfied with that solution in the long run, right? In the long run, this is another reason why we need robust identity solutions. But for now, phone numbers are one of the better options we have in an imperfect list of options. So this raises all sorts of new concerns, but in a small group, identity, the needs for identity are lower, right? If there's only 5 of us working together, I think, Trevor, what you're saying is completely viable. Hey, okay, that's Trevor's address, that's James's address, et cetera, right? And we're gonna be able to, if we see something fishy happening, we're gonna be able to talk to each other about it.
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up, because that's kind of maybe a more succinct way to say kind of what I was trying to communicate, is like, because I used that and I was kind of curious how that works. So CIP 8 is helpful there. But, imagine we did that, just instead of a phone number, it's the presence of, the token, the issuer token. The question that I was kind of throwing out there that I have no idea, is could a Plutus contract recognize that? Because I'm assuming that this voting app relied on a lot of off-chain processing. And obviously with the GBTE, you would like for that to be approved by that's kind of the idea of, right, using, a DApp, right? You want it to be approved by a Plutus script, or a Plutus contract. So I'm just curious if, like, picture the same model, but instead of a phone number, you just need to have the issuer token. But then could that be something that's recognized by a Plutus contract? I don't know, but it's super cool. I'm definitely going to read through CIP 8. That's very interesting.
Yeah, I can prove that I'm holding the issuer token, but I'm not sending it.
Yeah.
Yeah. when I first heard about reference scripts, that's what I thought it was going to mean, and I was bummed that it doesn't yet. But I think
Right.
there has to be a future CIP. Yeah, that's a cutting edge, and it absolutely needs to be explored. Yeah.
Well, no worries. We'll just solve that problem for everybody.
Yeah.
Implement it tomorrow. No big deal, right? Yeah.
So let's get it done. Is anybody else aware of work being done on that direction, or if anybody sees anything over the next few months about work being done on that, that's fascinating. Please be sure to share it. That's fabulous. No, and I'm certain Roberto will have some ideas on that. It'll be fun to talk to him. He and I were talking. I was on that ballot. He was like, I could just spoof a bunch of phone numbers and make sure you get on the stage. But as you can see, I didn't get selected, so he didn't go with that approach. I'm joking. So yeah, so a lot of different ideas to play around with here. And I thank you for giving me the time to throw a bunch of stuff on the table today. And it's like you never know what's going to most resonate with people. So if anybody here has a eureka moment, just let the crew know in Discord, and I really hope that everybody here feels welcome and empowered to kind of shout out and say, yo, here's an idea that I've been thinking about, and whether you want to present that like I did today at a session like this, or just say, hey, here's something I'm working on, anybody want to get together and think about it. That's what I'm hoping that these venues encourage, and I'll keep trying to do the same, just to try to get people fired up. So I'm going to keep working on that list. Tomorrow on the agenda, I was hoping that the hooks would be released by tomorrow. They're not published yet, so they might be by tomorrow, and if they are, it would be really fun to just take an initial look at those together and try to implement them in the front end. But if that doesn't yet happen, we can come back to some of this, whether it's refactoring GBTE or anything else people are thinking about today. And then I also want to start creating some space for people to contribute to the course if you want to. Okay, so if you have an idea for a brand new module, or if you're just looking for ways to get involved there, I just want to keep those doors open. There's never pressure to contribute in those ways, but if you're looking for something like that, love for you to know about it. And just the good news, I was invited to be on a panel about dev onboarding at the summit. So we'll be representing Gimbal Labs there, and I'm really excited about it. I'm actually less intimidated. I actually didn't like the idea of being up on stage alone. That doesn't sound fun. But the idea of being on a panel, bringing this kind of conversation, I'm really looking forward to the opportunity. And yeah, Andreas, exactly. Book.io, OG group. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so you can, this is a really good question. If anybody who sees Andre's question in the chat. Yes, okay. It is easy to look at somebody's wallet and say whether a token is there or not. That part's possible. If you've heard of any airdrops in any NFT communities, if you've seen any kind of functionality with this, it's possible to take a snapshot. We did this in the front end template, right? We can, where is that? I forget where it is. Blockchain queries, maybe it's right here. It looks like I got to update this, but yeah, it's trivial to get a list via a simple query of who holds a token, right? Then you get a list of addresses and you can give any sort of access to those addresses. The problem is, how do you record a decision from a holder of one of those tokens? That's the difference here. All right, so yeah, you hold the Bible in your wallet, but we need to know your answer, yes or no, to a given question. How do you share your yes or no? So I hope that distinction makes sense. But yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Andres. That's important. Sebastian, how was the university party this morning?
Great, man. Great. Good movement of kids and people interested in start to develop on Cardano. Good flow of people, good new minds, new blood, new initiatives, new energy, a new world.
So cool.
And we are ready.
That's
Gimba
so
Labs is ready for that.
I think I'd mentioned to you yesterday, my daughter was looking over my shoulder at JPEG store over the weekend while I was trying to get a handle on what was going on out there. And she's like, I want one of those. I was like, uh-oh. The next generation is here.
That's right.
You
man.
can't afford any of those. No. Cool. Do you have any interest in saying a word or two about the Seed Stars Prezzo yesterday? We didn't get a chance to talk about that either.
About the sisters?
Yeah.
Cool, man. Cool. A bunch of I think students. The students also with projects, really interested projects. And they have the general idea about the business, but they don't know how to integrate the blockchain ideas to the projects. And I think I contribute to make more clear the idea around how to adapt all the components of the traditional technology to this new technology, and they are more calm about how to make those changes, because the people in general thinks about this smart contract piece as a fundamental piece, and the idea is not. It's just a piece among many other pieces. So you have to, as a businessman, a businesswoman, you have to think about what is necessary in your business. Maybe you can use only your front end, use the libraries and all the tools, and connect to the blockchain and deliver your service to the clients, to the world, with a minimum contact with a smart contract. So we talk about that. People have a more clear idea about how to deal with this topic of smart contracts.
Can I steal all those lines for this panel discussion? That
Of
sounds
course.
great.
I'm a Gimba Labs son, a product of Gimba. That I would say by Alex. I think that's it. Okay, go ahead, man. I have other things, but I can talk to you later about that. The students of Eastern Hall are interested in take the PBL and build a kind of a cohort around the PBL in Asia. They are talking to me about that, so it's really interesting.
I'm looking at someone like Nelson right now, who's in a time zone like that, because I know he's willing to stay up really late, but maybe we can get on a more
Yeah.
sane schedule for more people by branching out like that.
Yes, Nelson, they are looking for new tutors and new assistants and new teachers. And you are for you can work with this new cohort of students in that time zone. And you are brilliant and smart, man. So it's a good job for you.
It'll be good to kind of put people on the map and kind of figure out who can support what as we start to. I'm still not sure what the word is. We're not trying to scale. We're trying to splinter or fork in a way that we can still be collaborating, but make sure that these things are running independently and together. So there's a lot of creative work to do there, but that's going to provide a really neat opportunity for it.
Yes.
Incredible. Thanks, partner.
My pleasure, man.
Some more great stuff in the chat. Inline datum to append a list of signatures. Yeah, yes, Justin, that's another one. Like, that's an example of something to let's see if we can make it and bring that to life. Inline datum, you know, and I think I've mentioned it before, logical mechanisms cogno contract. If you haven't seen that yet, I can grab a link for it in just a sec. But it's really, really helpful to take a look at that, just to see the way Quinn is a really experienced Plutus developer. And that open source repo he shared is really a gift to everybody to help you start to think about potential use cases for inline datum. I'll grab that. And Edmund, welcome. Glad you're here. I'd be happy to take a look at Cardano Connect Wallet with you, but you, as Trevor said or Dagwell said, you might not need it. Okay. The front end repo that just you can use in this course already has all the wallet connection stuff you need. Yeah. Yeah, Trevor, I'm glad you're thinking about that too. Yeah. Yeah. Replacing LP tokens in the DEX. Yeah, let's play with that. And let me get you that link. It's so fun to be able to look at an idea like this and just see how inspiring it can be. Definitely recommended reading if you haven't seen it yet. Cool. Thanks for sticking around late. That's my only agenda today. It's fun. It's fun to see how fast 2 hours can go. And I appreciate everybody for sticking around for this long. If nobody else has anything, till tomorrow. See you there. We'll see if we have some new hooks under the tree from the mesh team. And if they're out, we'll play with them. Otherwise, we'll think about what else to do. Cool. See y'all soon.